Hi everyone. So I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. I know I had a great holiday with family and I started making some handmade Christmas ornaments over the weekend, including these two felt latte cups that you see here. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to make these latte ornaments using some wool felt and the coffee cup gift card die from Honeybee Stamps. So one interesting thing to know if you didn't already know it, but many of your paper crafting dies can be used on felt, and you can, if they are large die cuts like this, you can probably make some Christmas ornaments out of your paper crafting dies. You can even make little stuffed animals depending on what types of dies you have. So I would challenge you to go back through all of the supplies that you have on hand and see if you have any dies that maybe you could use to create a Christmas ornament as well. And if you happen to have the coffee cup gift card holder from Honeybee Stamps, then you can follow along and make this adorable latte ornament with me. So earlier I showed the die that I used to cut out this, the base for the ornament. And now I am just gonna stitch on some individual pieces of felt on top of the base piece. And what I do when I am sewing different layers together, I will hold them in place with some pins just so that the felt doesn't move around, and so I can get a nice grip. Sometimes I find if you don't pin down your layers when you're sewing, they will move around no matter how tightly you think you're holding onto them, and then you can end up with uneven results. So I always like to pin things down. And I'm just using some embroidery thread that I got from Michael's, I think. There are 6 strands of embroidery thread with each of the pulls that I did here, and I'm just using all 6 strands. Sometimes in embroidery you might split the thread, so maybe you only use 2 or 3 strands at a time. But for this ornament, I thought it was good to have a thick row of thread. So I'm using all 6 pieces of thread here. And I'm just doing a simple running stitch. And I'm left-handed, so I'm going from left to right across the ornament. And then sometimes as I have to turn things around, I may start going from right to left. And I'm just going to work my way all the way around the little top of the coffee mug here. And then I'm just gonna finish up the last of my stitches along the top of the coffee lid. I'm gonna leave the bottom part of the lid unstitched for now because we are going to stitch the whole ornament together at the end, and I am going to stitch that row in at that point. Now I'm just going to tie off my embroidery thread, and I just kind of poke it underneath one of the stitches and then make a little knot, and then I will cut it with my scissors, and we are done with the lid for now. So next I'm going to take the little holder for the coffee cup, and I'm going to place it on the front, and I'm just going to cut off the back piece there. And we will, we are only going to do the front of this coffee mug for this video, just for time purposes. You can do both sides if you like. I'm going to show you another version where I did do both sides. It'll just take twice as long to do all the sewing because you'll have to do everything that you see on the front on the back as well. So now I'm just going to attach that little coffee cup holder to the base of our coffee mug, and I'm going to pin everything down, and then I am going to start adding my little stitches. And again, I'm using that same cream colored embroidery thread that we used on the lid of the cup, and I'm just going to make tiny little, I think they're about 1/4 of an inch stitches, running stitches, just going across the top of the little red holder, and then we're also going to make a row going across the bottom, and we're going to leave the sides unstitched for now because that is another part of the coffee cup that we are going to stitch together at the very end when we connect the front and the back. Okay, so I've stitched both rows of stitching onto my red holder, and now I'm going to add some decoration. So I have this little strip of Liberty of London fabric that I just folded over on itself so that the edges are neat, and I'm going to attach that onto our red coffee holder just for some decorations. So this is similar to what you would do in card making when you just want to layer some different pieces of paper together to make a nice design. I'm doing the same thing here with my fabrics. I'm just layering fabric and felt together instead of paper. So I'm just going to pin my little strip of Liberty of London fabric on so that it stays in place. And then we're also going to add a little circle to the center of the coffee cup. And on top of that, we're going to put a pink heart in a minute. But for felting like this, or for making ornaments, the way that I typically work is I work from the base layer outwards and I sew each individual piece on as I go. So now I am going to add the little decorative trim around our circle. And as I do that, I will connect that little piece of fabric behind the circle so that I don't have to sew the fabric on itself. I will just have it attached at certain points where it overlaps with the circle, if you can see that on the back. So I'm just taking this nice dark green embroidery thread, and again, I'm using all 6 strands here because I want my thread to appear nice and thick against this felt. And I am just going to work my way around the circle with a running stitch, being careful to hook onto that little fabric wherever I can, just to make sure that it stays in place as I go. And at this point, I've almost finished my green stitching around the edge of the circle, but I thought I might want to stuff it with a little bit of polyester stuffing before I added the heart, but then I decided against that. So I am just going to pin the heart in place where I'd like to have it, and then I will go back to stitching my green thread in a moment. So all I'm going to do here is I am just going to close up the circle by adding some more of these little 1/4 of an inch running stitches along the edge of the circle. And I have to tell you, this project, it took me maybe about an hour to do this ornament, which is only one-sided. The double-sided ornament I'll show you later probably took around 2 hours. So it is a bit of a time commitment, but the great thing is at the end you get this lovely adorable heirloom ornament that you can give as a really, really nice gift to someone that you love. So I think it's definitely worth the time investment. So now I have attached the little heart to the center of the circle because I want my coffee cup to have a little heart as a decoration. And the heart is also cut out using the Honeybee Stamps coffee die set. And I'm just using some cream embroidery thread to attach the heart to the circle. You could have used like a pale pink threading as well. Or if you're someone who likes more contrast, you could have used a contrasting color as well. So I would apply the same principles that you do in card design to design when trying to figure out, what color combinations you like for your ornaments. One thing that I love about all the different crafts that you can do is that when you build skill in one craft, it often translates into others. So you may find that if you've never tried making felt ornaments like this before, that when you start to make it, it's actually easier than you thought it would because you already have so many skills from card making or other crafts that will make it easy for you to kind of get into this new craft. So I've definitely noticed that with the different crafts that I've developed over the years, from sewing to knitting to crocheting to jewelry making to beading to card making to coloring, and also with respect to playing around with felt too. It just, the more crafts you accumulate, the easier the others become, I find. So now we're going to add some more decoration to our coffee mug, and I cut out 2 little coffee beans from the Honeybee Stamps dies as well. So we're going to have a little espresso bean, and then we're going to have a little lighter coffee bean in front of it. And I'm just applying my stitches around the edges, and then I'm going to put one solid line of stitches kind of down the middle just to give the beans a little bit of texture and to mimic that look that you would get from a coffee bean, where sometimes they have like that little split or indentation down the center. So if you are really good at embroidery, you can add different types of stitches here. Maybe you could have added some French knots, or I don't know. I think there's lots of options for different stitches. You could also, another thing that I realized as I was making this ornament is that space right above the red coffee cup holder and between the white lid, that is a perfect place if you want to put someone's name. So if you wanted to have some personalized Christmas ornaments on your Christmas tree, you could just embroider someone's name along that top line. And there's lots of different embroidery stitches that you could do to embroider a name. And the great thing is you don't need any tools to do that other than your needle and thread and a little pen, so you could draw in the name if you have really nice handwriting, and then you would just trace over that with your embroidery stitches. So another thing that I want to point out here is that I am using wool felt here, and it's a very good quality wool felt. And if you're making ornaments, what I suggest is to try to find and use the best wool that you can find. And if possible, the best felt you can find. And if possible, use wool felt. Wool felt is going to give you a really, really nice look. This felt here is called Wollfilz felt. It's spelled Wollfilz. And I purchased this from the Pearl Soho website. They have many, many shades, maybe 50 or 60 shades of different felt that you can buy by I think it's like a 12 by 12 piece. So there I just added the little loop so that we could hang our ornament on the tree when we're all done. And I just kind of threaded that in between the two sides of the coffee lid. Now I'm going to start assembling our coffee cup. So I just put a little piece of reinforcement in between the front and the back of the lid, just so that to give it a little bit of dimension. I couldn't really fit any stuffing in there, so I just took a piece of insulated lining and stuck it in there. You could also maybe even put like a thick piece of cardstock or a little strip of cardboard in there as well if you want your ornament to be a little bit firmer. And you would just make sure that whatever piece of fabric or stuffing or insulated fiber or whatever it is that you're using, that it doesn't touch the stitches as you're stitching around, because you won't be able to get your needle all the way through, and it will look more neat if you make sure that your whatever it is that you put in between the two layers of lid, that it doesn't touch the stitches. So I'm just going to finish up my running stitch here, and this is going to connect the front and the back of the top of our ornament. And then I'm going to show you how we're going to fill and stitch up the rest of the latte cup in a second. So I'm just going to tie off my little string here and hide it inside the coffee mug. And the way I do that is I just kind of pull my needle through the center, and then I just cut it so that there's a good inch of thread that is kind of hidden inside the coffee cup, and it won't come out or loose because it's so long, if that makes sense. Now we are going to add a running stitch along the sides and the top and the bottom of the coffee mug just to kind of seal it all off, and we're going to add some filling in the middle. So I'm just adding my pins first, just to make sure that the two layers stay neatly together and evenly together. And I'm going to start my stitches about a third of the way towards the edge of the top of the coffee mug. And I did that on purpose. I usually try not to start on a corner with embroidered items like this, just because it's harder to hide the little tail or the knot when you start on a corner. It's easier to hide if you start in the middle. And I'm just going to work my way around here with a running stitch that goes all along the top and the sides, and we are going to connect the stitching along the red coffee cup here that we left unstitched before, because we were waiting for this part of the process so that we could stitch all of the layers together at one time. If we had stitched the red holder onto the coffee cup before, then we would have nowhere to put our row of stitches now, and we'd either have a double row or it would be a little sloppy to seal the front and the back, or join the front and the back together. Okay, so now we have worked our way around our coffee mug, and now it's time to add a little bit of stuffing. So the goal here is just to give the coffee mug a little bit of dimension, just so that it's not completely flat, but we don't want it so stuffed that it's going to be puffy or look like a stuffed animal or something like that. We just want it to have a little bit of dimension. I could have even put even less stuffing in the ornament at this point, and that would have been fine. But again, it's really your personal preference as to how puffy you want your ornament to be. I'm going to show you another version of the coffee cup at the end that doesn't use any stuffing at all, but just some insulated lining, so it appears more flat, and the coffee mug actually looks maybe about a half of an inch taller because it's flatter. So I'm just going to finish up my stitches here, and I'm just going to kind of make a little knot, a little French knot, and then I'm going to just tie it off and then hide my thread inside the coffee cup, pull it out about 1.5 inches away, and then cut the string. And this way you don't have to worry about your thread ever becoming loose if you follow that technique. Now, so here we are. So here is our latte ornament. This is a one-sided ornament, so the back's a little bit sloppy if you just put one side, but I'm going to show you what some extra work will get you if you decide to do a two-sided ornament. So here is the back side of our double-sided ornament, and it just took twice as long to make, but I think it's definitely worth it to go the extra mile and to add the back to your ornament. And as you can see, the version on the right has that flat insulated lining, so it actually appears taller than the version on the left that has the fiber fill or the polyester fluffy filling there. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope this video gave you some ideas as to how you might use your paper crafting supplies for other projects, like using your paper crafting die cuts to make felt ornaments like these adorable little latte cups. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I hope you're having a great time with all of your holiday crafting projects, and I will see you again soon in the next video. Have a great day.